Space, the final frontier. These are the podcasts of the podcast Enterprise. Its only mission to explore story structures, to analyze our favorite characters and plot lines, to boldly talk about what everyone has seen before. Hello and welcome to the podcast Enterprise. This is the podcast where we watch Star Trek, the original series. We look at the story structure, what we liked, what we didn't like, the story, and everything else in between. I am Bala Ramadurai, and with me I have my co host Parvati Ramkumar. Say hello,
Hello,
Parvati.
everyone. Welcome back to our podcast. We have a very exciting episode today with a rogue computer.
Rogue Computer is actually a nice title than the Ultimate Computer. Excellent. May we have the summary, please?
When this episode begins, the USS Enterprise has been summoned to a space station. Kirk is confused because most of his crew has been offloaded onto the space station into the security holding area, and he has no idea what's going on. But once there, he is told by Commodore Bob Wesley of the USS Lexington that the great honor has been conferred on the Enterprise. A computer is going to be installed on the Enterprise that will take over most of what the crew does. The ship won't require a crew after this. This is very annoying for Kirk because he wasn't told about this and he is very suspicious of this computer. Now, this computer has been built by a genius called Dr. Richard Daystrom. He has made a lot of revolutionary technologies that are used in almost all the starships. They bring about this computer, the M5, they install it in engineering. Dr. Daystrom is a very smug, confident character who seems to treat this computer as a child, and it is also something that bothers Kirk because he feels that something is going wrong, and that part of it has to do with the fact that he might lose his job to this computer, and part of it is something else that he cannot explain. Quickly his fears are confirmed when this computer completely takes over the Enterprise. The first mission that they have, a trial mission, is where they have to go to planet Alpha Carinae 2. The computer uses its recommendations to recommend a landing party that does not include Kirk because Kirk is apparently non essential personnel. That bothers him. After that, there is a fake drill to check the computer's capabilities in a battle, which it does admirably and passes the test. Kirk is still unhappy because he feels the computer has way too much power. It cannot be disengaged. And eventually, what happens is the computer manages to take over the Enterprise as these things do. It does not respond to anybody's commands. It has overridden Kirk's authority. It destroys a robot mining ship just like that because it felt like it. It won't allow anybody to deactivate it because it's got some measures of self preservation built in. Then Kirk also discovers through Spock that this computer is not behaving as a computer should. It's behaving very erratically and illogically. I find that Dr. Daystrom, who's slightly unbalanced in the head, has impressed his engrams onto the computer, making it behave very oddly. By the time the second mock drill comes along, this M5 is out of control. It wants to destroy everything in its path. Kirk has to figure out a way to make it stop. But before he can do that, it has already attacked ships, it has killed people. And finally, what we see is Kirk using a bit of ingenuity to talk his way into deactivating the computer. Back to you, Bala, for a detailed summary.
This is the four-act structure. We start with a lot of suspense because they are brought on board the space station, and the crew is wondering, Kirk is wondering, what are they doing there? Turns out that they have been selected, and so this sets the tone for the rest of the episode because it's all authoritarian. Things are just thrust upon Kirk, and he has to comply. He has no way else. He has nothing else but to comply to the requests of the people who want him to obey his their commands. So that's how the episode starts. And turns out that he doesn't need most of the crew. That's another thing that bothers him. In the teaser itself, there are only a crew of 20. Bob Wesley, also tells him to sit back and let the machine do the work, which is so anti Kirk. So that's how the teaser starts. Then in the first act, we get to know that Kirk is not happy. McCoy expresses unhappiness also. But one person who's very happy is Spock, because things are going to be in the control of a machine. So which is very very good for Spock. That's where it starts, the first act. And then they're introduced to Dr. Daystrom and his invention M5, and we're introduced to what it can do and why is it there. That's set up in the first act nicely. And also, towards the end of the first act, we realize that M5, Kirk is not happy with M5 getting in the way of his command. That's shown very well with the landing party recommendations. The first act ends with M5 treating McCoy and Kirk as non essential personnel. That's the first level of tension. The second act has the second level of escalation, where you see that there's a drill and there's oops accident, apparently an oops accident, that a vessel gets destroyed. But Kirk doesn't believe that this is I'm sorry, that doesn't happen in this act. In this act, the drill goes very very well, much better than they'd expected. And they refer to Captain Kirk as Captain Dunsell because he is a captain who is no longer required. And that's the midpoint of the second act. We clearly see a midpoint in this episode. And by the end of the second act, we see that now M5 has taken complete control over the Enterprise, and seems to be that it's the captain of the ship, and it's not letting anyone else take over either. So, and that's where we see that it actually destroys the freighter. I think it's a freighter or freighter. And that's what happens with the second act. And the end, they find that um, M5 is in control of the Enterprise, the freighter is destroyed, and Kirk is not in command. So those are things that happen at the end of the second act. The third act starts with one of the red shirts being killed because he quote unquote got in the way, and M5 is absolutely and totally in control now. There's no way to go around M5. Looks like it's taken over everything. Scott and Spock do try to do something to see if they can get back in control, but turns out to be a decoy. And that's the whole of third act, where Scott and Spock's efforts and Kirk's efforts are kept at bay by M5. M5 has the last laugh, and in the end of third act. And now there is another war game. This is an official war game that was already announced, but M5 apparently is not going to treat it as a war game. It's going to treat it as something that it has to do. So this is something that the people on the Enterprise are scared of, because it's going to result in some bad things. They already see that M5 is not in control, and there's no way to uh, pull back on M5. So that's the end of the third act. We really don't know what's going to happen because M5 is in control, clearly doesn't have good intentions, and there are 4 ships attacking the Enterprise as part of a war game. Now, in the fourth act, M5 is in control, is in command, in command, and it's firing phasers at full power, and has cripples and pretty much destroys Excalibur, one of the Federation ships. And towards the end, M5 is neutralized, but after a lot of drama and absolute desperation, they come up with an idea to see how to get back power from M5. So, in fact, the last statement just before M5 gets neutralized is Kirk saying that 19 lives were lost in the line of duty. So he's actually thrown his hands up in the air, saying, "I'm done. This may happen too, because this is what it has come to." of course, that doesn't happen, and there's a nice twist at the end, and of course, there's a light moment to end the fourth act also. So that's the end of the fourth act. And so, Parvati, what did you think about the ultimate computer?
I really enjoyed this. It was so intense. There was so much characterization and there was so much going on. And I also liked that this computer wasn't particularly chatty. It didn't say much. It just went out there and destroyed everything in its path. And it's also quite interesting that in the beginning, although Spock was so completely taken up with this machine, he thought it's fantastic, he thought it's incredible. As the story progressed, he started thinking that perhaps it's better to have Kirk in charge. He doesn't want to be under control of a machine. And also, he's the first person to notice that this thing was behaving in a very illogical manner, in a human manner. And that's when everything starts to come apart. And I think this episode had a lot of food for thought, particularly when it comes to things like artificial intelligence and turning complete control over to such a machine. And Dr. Daystrom, he is a very disturbed and troubled individual. I thought that came through really, really well. And in his desperation to get these multitronic units to actually work, 1 to 4, the units M1 to M4 were actually failures, and he came up with these ideas to impress his engrams onto the computer, which means that it also captured some of his insanity, and it was behaving in a very illogical way because its creator was not quite stable. I thought that came through really well. What did you think, Bala?
Yeah, I think it was really on the edge, keeping you at the edge of the seat kind of an episode throughout, particularly when Daystrom and M5 enter the scene. It's really intriguing. You think that, oh, this is another one of those machines versus man versus
Yes.
machine, kind of humans versus machine kind of an episode. But yes, it was that. But it was also, there were a lot of layers to this. One was you later realize that this is the insecurity of boy wonder.
Yes,
That's what
he
he
does.
says, right? Colleagues laughing behind his back and all that. So all that also gets impressed upon the computer. And because we think AI is this ultimate amazing computer which does things
Yeah.
efficiently and all that. However, as we see, and this episode is just amazing, the timing is just amazing for us that we're watching this, is that we are in the age of generative AI, where artificial intelligence writes
Mm.
poems and can write creative work and create pictures and create videos. All that creative stuff it
Yeah.
can do is what we see. But you also see that, particularly with ChatGPT, you can see that it says ChatGPT can make mistakes. So it's almost as if it's a reflection of all of us. So we are the Daystrom and we are impressing our engrams on the AI. For me, that was the one-to-one correlation I
Mm.
could see between what's going on right now and what's really the episode really talks about. Wonderful,
Yeah,
wonderful stuff.
it was really fascinating that this machine actually captured a lot of Dr. Daystrom's turmoil. It captured a lot of his thoughts. It captured a lot of his hallucinations and insanity. I wouldn't call them hallucinations. He obviously has been through a lot, but his instability has been impressed upon the machine. And it doesn't, like Spock said, it's not functioning in a logical manner. It's doing things that a very unstable human would do, which which is actually pretty frightening, because what was its reasoning for destroying a robot ship? There was no crew in that ship, true, but why did it take a dislike to that ship? It is as unpredictable as a human would be, and that's pretty frightening, the way it went about destroying those ships, and Kirk could do nothing. And it was also quite entertaining, Bala, to see that when the M5 succeeded in its drills, they called Kirk Captain Dunsel. The minute it started doing stuff it was not supposed to do, people are screaming for Kirk. That ultimately the human has to take control, because this thing has no idea what it's doing.
Yes, that was a good observation there. That Captain Dunsel and the unnecessary captain is not recommended as a landing
Yes.
party member because he's non-essential. All that stuff goes on. In fact, I'm surprised that in the 20 people that
Yeah.
they selected, there's still
Yeah.
Captain Kirk to
They
start off.
didn't need it.
Have you gone mad? Is what Bob
Yeah.
he says. He should have said, "Hey, you have a robot in your control. It's going berserk." No, he didn't do that. Yeah, good one there. Good,
I
right
mean,
one.
it was
Yeah,
quite
exactly.
insulting to call him Captain Dunsel, and then when this thing went rogue, they're all, Kirk, what are you doing? What? Why are you at the helm doing nothing? It's not like he had any control in the first place. That was the entire point. You wanted to give control of the Enterprise to the machine, and then you realize suddenly that it's going completely out of control. It's violent, and then you need Kirk back as a helm. And
Hmm.
I really liked how this machine didn't talk much, Bala. It was not a very chatty thing. It was not like Landru from one of our previous episodes. It was
Right.
very, it seemed to be observing a lot of things, taking its own decisions, and not really engaging in conversation.
Yes, yes. Because we have had chatty
Yeah,
AI before. Landru, there was
correct.
Nomad, and so on. The list goes on and on. And there were these androids,
Yes,
right? So, what are little girls made of? They were, in fact, they were downright
yes, they
annoying.
were.
And what's his name? Norman in
Yeah.
iMud. They were, what's those
Oh,
identical
yeah,
twins?
very.
I forget their names. Yeah. So they were all there. And here's one AI which is doing its job. It has its own intention, its own agenda. It's doing that.
Yes,
It's following that, and there's no two ways to that according to that AI. So that's what it's going to do. It's what it's going to do. Deal with the
correct. But
consequences.
it is not immune to Kirk's speech. It will get deactivated.
I read it on Memory Alpha that this is the fourth AI thing that Kirk talks
Yeah,
to
yeah,
death.
yeah. It
That's
is.
what
It is.
the
It doesn't matter if the AI is chatty or not. Kirk will talk it to death and deactivate it somehow, short circuited.
This episode was well paced. It started off slowly, us getting the hang of the
Yeah.
concept, and the stakes kept
Mm.
increasing from act to act. You can see how it was all personal in the first act to shipwide to now humanity, right? So third and fourth act is now clearly now if this goes rogue, it's going to be a real problem for
Yes.
all these ships. So not just and it was a problem. Excalibur had all its crew dead, right? So it tells you how, and how intelligently it was paced and how intelligently the stakes were raised. That was amazing. It's a great example of how to write a good science fiction, good pacing of an
And
episode.
one thing I really liked at the beginning was Kirk was completely helpless because he had his orders. He had to just sit and watch his machine do whatever it was supposed to do. And you feel helpless with him because it seems that there's no way out while this machine is outperforming him in every possible way. It is outperforming all the human crew in every possible way. And at that point, along with Daystrom's smugness, you feel that this machine cannot make mistakes. It's too perfect. It's from then on that stuff starts going downhill. It's going out of control. And how is Kirk going to get the ship and his crew out of this mess? How is he going to stop the M5 from thinking of itself as being under threat and destroying all those other Federation starships? And I also feel that this is one case where the Federation made a huge mistake by giving this computer so much power. They didn't. I understand that Dr. Daystrom was a genius. He had done so much. He's a legend. It's true, but at the same time, there was no way to switch the computer off, which was a huge flaw. And I think that was shown very well because Scotty also notes that there's no way to turn it off. They have to go to the source. Yeah, I enjoyed those bits. They were very tense.
No, for me, the parallel I could think of, apart from the
Yeah.
AI parallels we already talked about, was this whole driverless
Uh,
car. I love driving the geared vehicles, like the geared as in the
uh-huh.
stick shift with the clutch and all that stuff, because it gives you control over how you drive, your driving habits, and
Yeah.
all that. Puts you literally in the driver's seat. Compare that to the next stage of evolution, which is the
Mm-hmm.
automatic transmission. So the car decides at what gear the car
Yes.
should be at based on what the speed is. Now compare that to the next level of evolution, which is automatic parking. So the
Yes.
parking stuff, which many people find challenging, is now handed over to the machine. The algorithms with the camera and the sensors take care of it. To the next level of evolution, which is complete driving assistance by the car itself. All the alerts, all that is taken care of, cruise control to anti collision,
Mm.
all that. And the ultimate automation is a driverless car where it's completely
Yes.
automated, where you are a passenger in the car. You might as well be sitting in a
Yes.
cab with something else or
Yeah.
somebody else driving it. It's like that. From a
Ah.
Kirk's point of view, it is that you're giving up all of those pedals and gears and all that, and you're just handing over literally the keys of the Enterprise to this
Yeah.
machine and say, okay, and from now on you handle it. I'm just going to watch the
Yeah.
machine do the job, do the work, like
And
what Bob
I
Wesley
think
said.
the Kirk did have a point when he was talking about himself losing his job, and he was talking about ships at sea. Those are very poignant moments because there was this existential
Hmm.
crisis for him. I feel like machines like this need an off switch.
That was definitely one of those things that the machine also learns that the off they did design an off switch, so to speak, but the machine quickly learned that that means the end of its control. Now you could see that the machine wanted to be in control by the destruction, so they give you a flavor of how much this machine actually enjoys
Yeah.
control by the destruction of that ore freighter, right? For no reason, just because it can do it. It was There was no provocation. It was not entering the space.
Maybe
It
it
was
was
not pointing.
jealous.
It hadn't
Yeah.
done a it hadn't done a target lock or any
True.
such thing. It was just minding its
Yeah.
own business. It was a robo freighter. There was no hostile intentions. However, it went ahead and destroyed this because it felt that it could. So it's that once you have such access to such amazing power, and that's summarized by Daystrom at the end, saying that this is a human mind with the limitless power and access as the machines do. So this is a human mind, but amplified by all the electronics, all the
Yeah.
machines that are there, with somehow the wrong interpretation, like we saw in Landru or
I
with
also
Nomad.
was also wondering why they kept the facility to switch off M5 where it could see it, where it could hear that you're going to switch it off. Why would you do that? Why don't you keep it somewhere out of sight and out of its hearing instead of right in front of it, on it actually? I believe they had kept some way to deactivate it on the machine. Why would you do that? Because it has self preservation programmed into it. It's not going to let you switch it off.
Kirk felt that this is several layers to that, like we were discussing.
Mm.
One is the whole idea of Daystrom's insecurity, his career being at jeopardy, and he was pressuring himself to come up with the next blockbuster,
Yes.
so that he can prove to the world that he is really good, and that first thing, that Nobel Prize winning thing, was not by accident, but
Yeah.
it really, really happened to. He happens to be a good guy.
Mm-hmm.
So that is that one pressure. Then the second thing is he feels that people shouldn't lose lives going out there on risky missions. His invention should somehow help humanity in doing better,
Yeah.
in not losing their lives. So those two things led him to this computer that he thinks will alter the way we do space exploration.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yes.
to me, I felt that these two were at loggerheads with what Kirk wants and what the rest of the crew also wants.
Yes. Unfortunately, although Daystrom's ideas were very noble, that he wants to build something that will serve humanity, he wants humanity to not lose its life exploring space. Those are all very noble ideas, but he was driven by something that was not quite stable because all the humiliations that he faced, all the all the things people said about him behind his back, all of that was playing on his mind, and for whatever reason, it it did not strike him that by impressing his engrams onto M5, he would also be transferring all those emotions into the machine. And he was also so involved with this project that he started seeing the computer as something like a child, as his child. And whenever it made a mistake, whenever it murdered, whenever it veered off course, he was trying to defend it. He was trying to defend it, prevent it from being deactivated. And he just couldn't see clearly because this project meant so much to him. And he was also, I think, very angry at Kirk for not believing in the power of this M5 as he did. And he didn't want it to. And it also showed, right? Ultimately, towards the end, when Kirk was talking about deactivating the machine, Daystrom did lose it. He did become completely unhinged, and that is what the computer picked up for whatever reason. It was very unfortunate that he had all these ideas, he had the potential to do it. He did do something revolutionary, except it was also insanity.
Yeah, Dr. Daystrom was both the driving force, the mentor kind of character in this episode.
Yeah.
Uh, Plus, he was also sort of the antagonist. His
Yes,
antagonism
both.
coming through expressed via the M5 and what it did. So, pretty interesting how they have done that because he's a revered character in one
He
sense
is.
that his
Yeah.
duotronics achievements actually run the Enterprise. Today's
Yes,
design of
correct.
the Enterprise is
Yeah,
entirely based on Daystrom's inventions from the past. And
correct.
here he is trying to do better than what he had done before. However, is his insecurities, his all his fears and all that is at loggerheads with his own intentions. So it kind of led to so many people dying at Excalibur, which is not what he really wanted. The starting point of his mission
Yeah,
was that he wants to preserve life, but at the end
correct.
he ended up being responsible for so many deaths on Excalibur.
He did the absolute impossible, Bala. He got Spock to admit that he would rather be under humans than this machine. That is the absolute impossible thing that he achieved. In the beginning, Spock was just so starry eyed about this computer. He wanted it to function, he wanted it to take over the Enterprise. And even though he was trying to pacify Kirk in his own not very comforting way, ultimately it was too much even for him. And that showed in, I think, Daystrom had a lot of demons in his mind, and I think that was
Hmm.
portrayed so well because he did all his humiliations and everything that he did, and he felt that for some reason he felt that he was just not good enough, and that showed.
Hmm. Hmm. Actually, it also brings about some of the insecurities we have about ourselves. Right? Kirk's
Correct.
character was,
Yeah.
we could totally see, am I so petty to lose my, I'm feeling so bad about losing my job to the computer?
Yeah.
Things like, let's say, robotic cleaner, right?
Yes.
So if your job is to clean homes and a robot takes over the cleaning job,
Yeah.
one way is to look at it saying, hey, I'm going to do something better than cleaning for a living. But there's another way is saying that I lost out to a computer. I mean, the
Correct.
whole idea of outsourcing and automation, both these come to my mind
Yeah.
because on the one hand, you can argue that, hey, outsourcing means that you can focus on value added tasks and you can do all that.
Mm.
However, my job is taken away. Or same
Correct.
thing with automation, right?
Yeah.
People fear generative AI because it's taking away jobs. But on the other side of the argument is, hey, that frees up space, time and space for you to try something out, something that you've never looked at before.
Ah, I think McCoy expressed it very well when he told Kirk that everyone feels sorry when it happens to somebody else. When somebody else loses their job to a machine, you feel sorry, but it's different when it happens to you. And that's exactly what
Mm.
Kirk was thinking. But I also think, personally, I feel that in Kirk's case, he did have some kind of a premonition that this machine was not stable. That is, it
Yeah.
could have been because Daystrom himself did not come across as entirely stable right at the start. He was not the
Mm.
most endearing. He did seem a little too smug, a little too confident, a little too in command. And he
Mm.
trusted his machine so much that maybe that kind of got Kirk's suspicions up. I think so in any case. And that's also why he didn't like this machine as much as everyone else did. He was probably picking up on those Daystrom's instability right at the start, and he knew that this can't work. It's going to do something that it shouldn't do. His hunches were right as usual, and he had to talk it to death.
Now, also Kirk says, right? So this is interesting because Kirk always feels that the ship is his buddy, his
Yeah.
I don't know, girlfriend, his. Oh, I mean, he gives so many analogies in the past. He's
Yes.
done that, and now he
Yes.
says, "I'm at odds with the ship." He actually says this, and
Yep.
he says it feels very different. I've never been at odds with the ship, right?
Correct.
That scene is just amazing, McCoy Kirk, and that's one of the things that I totally appreciate. That this is there in Balance of Terror also.
Yes.
That exact moment in which nothing can be done. It seems like that's it over for Kirk, and
Yep.
that's when they have this McCoy Kirk interaction. This is the second
Correct.
one like that, and he brings in what Finnegan's Folly,
Yeah, he
Finnegan's
does.
Folly, I think it's
Finnegan's
called.
Folly, a green colored whatever it was.
One of his better
Yes, yes.
prescriptions, he says.
It
And
was,
then comes that poem, right? All I ask is a tall ship and a star to
yes.
steer by. It's so good. It
It's
was
so
just
good.
so good.
Yes. It was so good. And it summarizes what Kirk feels exactly. He had to resort to poetry because I think a lot of his emotions were just all over the place, and it was more intuitive than anything else. Just like the ending when he decided not to turn on the Enterprise's power just so that he gambled. It was a gamble. Everything is
Mm,
run on intuition and taking risks, which that computer is not able to do. It's still running in a very convoluted logical fashion, which is,
mm,
like Spock said, also illogical, but it
mm.
had its reasons. It had its reasons. It could never have done what Kirk ultimately did.
It's exactly what Daystrom was trying to do. That parallel also was there at the end, saying
Yeah.
what Daystrom was going through was exactly what M5 was going through, right? So
Ha,
it is
yes,
trying to
yes.
prove to the world that it can do so many amazing things, and it was failing because of it was internally convoluted.
Yep.
And when it got to know that it's internally convoluted, it immediately punishes itself, saying Daystrom went into a nervous shock
Uh-huh.
and breakdown, and
Yes.
M5 is up there for suicide. So
Yep.
that was great, very very well done, and that scene is
And
just too good.
N5 is so very selfless that it decides to not only kill itself but take everybody else along with it. A very very selfless machine. There's no partiality. It's not going to say that I will just allow myself to be deactivated. I'm going to take all of you also with me. Very nice machine. Very friendly.
No, you can see Kirk's frustration from the word go. I mean, the
Yeah,
teaser itself had
exactly.
the thing saying, "Give me an explanation. I think I'm entitled for an explanation." The whole thing was kept under wraps, and
Correct. Yeah.
it was. Wesley tried his best to say that you've been chosen. This is not something that every other starship captain gets to go through.
Yeah.
You're the chosen one. Enterprise is the chosen ship, and all that. On and
Yeah.
on the other hand, there's Spock who's like, I have A7 computer certification.
Yes. Didn't McCoy say something along the lines of, "Did you see the love light in Spock's eyes?" Exactly. That's exactly what it was.
Yes, now machines are going to take over, and that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's how it should be.
That's
Everything is going to be efficient from now on.
yes, and I am so happy being a slave to these machines. That is until the machine started going crazy, and then he thinks maybe
Oh
not.
yeah.
Maybe the human is better. I think I'd like Kirk better. It's just
Then he brings up stuff like loyalty and all
yeah,
that. But
all these
yeah,
things. He
then
didn't. Yeah, none of those things made sense to him before. But now he says machine is malfunctioning. Let me go back to the human stuff. It's just quite entertaining.
yeah, even the part where we were talking about this earlier, that Kirk had this red alert somewhere that intuitively felt that there's something wrong, and you
Yeah.
did remark that. That is, he found something wrong with Daystrom,
Yep.
and that something was not but he couldn't really put his finger on what was it.
Yeah,
And he didn't know enough about M5 also to comment, but he felt there was something wrong, right? The machine or
exactly.
this, and he is conflicted because he felt that, hey, wait a second, maybe it's aiming at my job, maybe that's what it is. It was all
Ah,
about, right? So
yeah. I
yeah, that was
personally
amazing.
think, yeah, I personally think he did pick up on Daystrom's instability, and that was what was bothering. But how
Hmm.
do you put that into words? He just didn't know. And it was, I also think that he was worried that he would lose his job. That was a very serious worry
Hmm.
for him, I think. But there was
Yes.
also this. Primarily, I believe that it was this. He picked up on Daystrom's instability and he couldn't express it properly. And not even McCoy could actually gauge that it was there's something else going on in Kirk's mind. And he it came the realization came a bit late because by then I think M5 had killed so many people, it had destroyed that robot ship for no reason. And at least people realized it by then, and even Kirk was able to articulate by then what there was something seriously wrong.
Yeah, actually, a tiny example of what M5 was doing at the end of first act, shutting down decks 4 and 5 because
Yep,
it
yeah,
felt that
yeah,
it
yeah.
was non-essential, etc., etc.
Ah.
Just a few moments ago, this is for the listeners. My computer kept changing the gain on the microphone because it felt that I was shouting too loudly, and
Yeah,
it kept
it
changing it
decided.
on its own,
Yeah.
and I had no control over it. So I
Correct.
had to change the device. I don't know if it's sounding odd now, but I had to change the device. I had to do all sorts of hard tricks to that
Yep,
to make it not do that. So I
correct.
can see how annoying it could have been for Kirk. Is we were
Yep,
just turning off the ship on its own
yep.
without giving any warnings because it feels that that's the right thing to do.
And the worst part is you need to have some kind of creativity to override the computer's logic or illogic, whatever the case may be. You have to think out of
Hmm.
the box because it's going to block you. No matter what you do, most of what you do, it's just going to find a way to prevent you from doing it and keep doing what it wants to do. That's exactly what
Hmm.
M5 did. And ultimately, Kirk had to rely on his wonderful speeches to deactivate it. That was the only way to get it to stop doing what it was doing. But yeah,
Hmm.
at the
Yeah.
fourth computer that stood no chance against him.
And you saw also that Sulu and Chekhov were completely jobless there because
Yeah, yeah,
it's easily taken over their jobs without any problems.
correct.
From first act, it had taken over their jobs, and all Sulu and Chekhov could do is look at M5 change everything, the course, the
Yep.
direction, the speed, the phasers, everything they were it was taking care of.
It was taking care of everything, and it also made sure that they didn't interfere by freezing the controls. So no human
Hmm.
interference. It
Hmm.
first it anticipated that eventually it would do something that the humans will not like, and it just managed to freeze all the controls so that it could continue doing what it was doing, which is utter mania, but still it had the foresight to gauge or to guess that ultimately the humans would want control back.
Hmm. Yeah. So, in fact, that brought about this whole suddenly in the middle of second act. I think Kirk realizes maybe this is practical. He's coming to terms with the fact that maybe we need to automate a few things here and there to make it practical.
Yes.
And then Spock comes up with this gem saying practical but not desirable. So I was like, I want computer to be servants. I don't want to work for computers. So
Yep.
that is his whole philosophy now. That he's going to be loyal to his captain,
I
which
very
we've seen it several times already. Yes.
correct, yes, but I very much doubt that he thought that way in the beginning. It's only when N5 started getting a little unhinged that he thought that maybe this is not such a great idea after all. I don't want to be a servant to this machine. And Kirk thinking about making things more automated, I wonder if that is him actually wanting to make things automated, or if he's just resigned to the fact that things are going to get automated and he might as well get used to it. It's a little hard to tell whether he was just resigning himself to the fact that now the computer, the M5, is in control, and he might as well just sit back as Captain Dunzel.
No, I don't think Kirk has given several. I don't think Kirk is against automation per se or
Yeah,
advancement per se,
correct.
because we've seen him use the machines in the past. He's
Yeah,
obviously used all the tools and that are available on board the Enterprise.
that's
He's
true.
definitely there,
Yeah,
but I think the philosophy that he carries is that the ultimate decision, the ultimate value call, the intuitive part of it shall be from me,
yeah,
and I shall take that decision because I am in
exactly.
command here.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And give the
So
damn thing an off switch because it doesn't. Yeah,
exactly. That is what M5 didn't learn, that it's not the master, it's not there to replace anyone, but to
yeah,
help, which is where Daystrom was completely wrong. Because
yeah,
if the idea was to replace the captain, then it was a wrong one. If
correct.
the idea is to help humans explore space better,
Yeah,
all that stuff, yes, you should do that, but the ultimate call should be left to the humans.
yeah,
Give them the best data, make it simple, make it easy for them, but do that work, but leave that final call to the humans. That leaves them in. Even with children, they say that don't tell them what to do,
ah,
but give them choices. You
yes,
can say, if the you already decided that you want them to wear a shirt, but the kid is insisting on a t-shirt.
yeah,
You just tell them, do you want a green shirt or a red shirt? So now they're thinking, okay, red or green. I like the red better. That's
mm,
usually what is I'm going to go. And
mm-hmm.
now they're feeling in control. Although the technically the choice was yours.
Yeah,
The shirt was your idea, but
true.
they don't know that. So that's how automation can be better.
I I don't know if it should even have the assumption of control. I feel like it should know its place. If even
Yeah,
if it
yeah.
even if it gets the idea that it is in control, it could be a problem. It should
Hmm.
know that it is subservient to the human, in which
Yes.
case I think it would function optimally. And it should also not be given as much power as the M5 was, because there was no reason for it to give it so much power that it was able to jam the navigation controls, it was able to jam the engineering controls, it was able to use power from the engineering power sources to actually disintegrate that red shirt. It should not be given
Hmm.
so much power. And how did it get so much
Hmm.
power? That it obviously doesn't know its place. I feel that like you said, that is where Daystrom made a huge mistake. He gave absolute authority to a machine that was completely not ready for it. It will never be ready for it because it's a machine. And like I said quite a few times, not having an off switch was a huge, huge mistake. Or alternatively, if there is a way to switch it off, keep it away from the machine. Why do you want to keep it where it can see it, where it can hear you saying that I am going to deactivate it? Why do you want to do that? Especially since it's unstable. So it's, yeah, quite a lot of stuff going on in this episode actually.
Yeah, I'm thinking the parallel could also another one that came to me is like the autopilot in on board a passenger plane, right?
Yeah,
Airplane.
yeah, yeah.
So the autopilot basically functions that this is a certain route
Yep,
that's already predetermined by the flight plan
correct.
based on the fact that it flies very close to many of the airports.
Uh-huh.
May not be the fastest, it may not be the most fuel efficient, but in case of emergencies, there's always some airport nearby.
Correct.
2 hours, an
Yeah.
hour away, there's always an airport nearby, and that's how the flight plan is. And you feed that into the system, it just takes you there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes,
Now,
yes.
if there is a weather phenomenon that's happening, and that obviously usually is not so predictable,
Mm-hmm.
so there's turbulence, say, then the captain of the ship has the control to disengage the
Yeah.
autopilot
Correct.
and take the decision to go all around it. It could be with the use of the autopilot. It could also be that he can alter the flight plan
Huh.
I don't know if that's possible. I'm no
Mm.
pilot to know that, but at least they go around it. That much
Yeah.
I've seen. That sometimes they do maneuver around those trouble spots, and that's completely in their control.
Yeah.
Once out of harm's way, they go back to the autopilot, and this is where machines are really super. So you're right. It's the ability to disengage when you want to, and the ability to engage when you want to,
Correct. Yeah.
which is what Kirk does, right? Kirk exactly uses M5 like an autopilot and disengages when
Correct.
he
Yes, in the
wants to take the
beginning.
decision.
Yes.
Yeah, in the beginning he does that, and Daystrom is like, "Oh, what are you doing? You can easily pass it on to." No, that's not the idea. The idea
Yeah.
is who's the boss, who's in control here.
And the machine needs to know its place. I also think Daystrom was given far too much power on that on the Enterprise. Everybody kind of allowed him to get away with things when he was not exactly he was not exactly cooperative with the crew. He was kind of rude to Captain Kirk. I think
Hmm.
there should have been some authority shown there. Despite it doesn't matter that he's a genius, he's still aboard the Enterprise, and Kirk is still the captain. I think he should have been kind of shown that authority a little bit so that he wasn't quite so overconfident about what he was going to do. And if that had been shown, maybe I don't know, he might have deactivated the M5 before it destroyed the robot freighter.
In spite of what Daystrom did mention about his own career being colleagues laughing
Yeah.
and becoming famous at his expense,
Uh huh.
I think Federation allowed him to experiment live like this
Yeah.
because of his reputation. I
Correct.
think, like you said, right? So I don't think there were very many tests carried out because it obviously failed the moment things got really bad. It went out of whack, and this could
Ah.
have easily been done on a, I don't know, robotic freighter maybe
Yep.
without humans being present there, because this is jeopardizing 1920 lives,
Correct. And the ship.
and on a ship, on a real
Yeah.
life ship. So to me, it seems like they were overconfident. The Federation, I'm blaming the Federation guys
Yep.
also to trust Daystrom based purely on his past
Uh-huh.
records
Yeah.
and not on the merit of the idea that was there. Sounds great, but the proper sequence, like how they do in pharmaceutical industry, have one, round two, round three, round four.
Yep.
I'm sure there was such a protocol even when acceptance of new technology in on board on
Correct.
a starship,
Yeah.
right? So I think they probably skipped a step or two in between
Yeah.
and just gave this Daystrom a free ride on an elite starship,
Correct.
right?
Yeah.
From the word go. So they thought, oh, if we can pull this off, then we can show to the entire federation that this is look what we have achieved, automation of
Aha.
an entire ship.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It was also a little bit frightening at how quickly they said this is a great honor to Kirk, that this was going to be installed so quickly. So quickly. You don't know what the machine is, you don't know what it's capable of doing, and Kirk is supposed to be honored and give up his control just like that. It went moved too fast. It felt to me personally as a viewer, it felt like they had done no tests on this machine. They had not put it through a simulator. They had not done any simulated tests on it. And like you said, they could have put it on a robot fighter or something like that just to test it out to see what it does. Instead, they had to use the Enterprise and create a mess out of the whole thing. And so many people died for what? For what
Yeah.
actually? Just so that Daystrom could,
Particularly
yeah.
given the history that M1 to M4 was not entirely successful
What did
as
he
he put
mean
it.
by that?
So
Yeah, exactly.
I would really have definitely. I don't blame Kirk at all for having that red alert, because
Yep.
four of your versions are not entirely successful, and you've taken the fifth one, which how do you it's going to be successful on a real war game? So
Exactly.
it is all too rash on the Federation's part.
Exactly. I also think that M1 through M4 might have been a lot more stable than the M5. Maybe maybe they have taken orders better. You never know, because it didn't. They none of them had any crazy engrams impressed upon them. So they might have
Ah,
been a
yeah.
little more stable. They might have been stable. They might have listened to Kirk a bit more. You never know. But it is a very brash and illogical decision to just install this computer without any test directly onto the enterprise and then tell us, yeah, you should be honored by this, and expecting to just step aside. No wonder he had
Yeah, yeah,
reservations.
absolutely. Yeah, and in the process, we lost people on Excalibur.
Yeah, on the
What is that?
Lexington.
Hood, Potemkin,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
they are also suffered casualties. What is the other ship?
There was a
Excalibur is the main ship
Yeah,
that
there was Excalibur, Lexington, Potemkin, and one
Lexington. Ah, Lexington
Lexington.
was what
Yeah,
Wesley was in command of. Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
And I, like I think I mentioned this before also. I love how Commodore Wesley was calling him Captain Dunsel, and the minute he lost crew, where's Kirk? I want to talk to Kirk.
I want his head
Yeah,
now.
I want his head. I want Kirk's head. But you're the guy who told him that he is useless, and now you want Kirk's head, not the M5's head. It, it's that was quick.
Yeah,
Yeah, his change of heart was
yes,
very quick.
exactly. Yeah, that finally brought that whole Daystrom appealing to M5, right?
Yeah.
So because Kirk had to do something, he said, "Hey, can you at least talk to it? It's worked for me.
Yeah.
Why don't you try it?"
But also, I don't know if whether Daystrom talking to it actually made it worse. He's treating it like a baby and talking to it
Yeah,
like
you killed
slightly, yeah.
50 people. How cute is that?
Yeah, how cute.
You
That's
killed
all
three,
it
four
did.
hundred people. Oh, so amazing. You can do better.
I know, it is
Take
just
down
a
three
little bit.
starships.
You're just a little computer. You do what I say. I created you. It was too much. It was way too much. I don't think that was the way to talk to it. And ultimately, Kirk had to step in. And yeah, again,
Yes.
considering how unhinged Daystrom became towards the beginning, towards the end, it, that whole scene was just full of tension, and he was
Yes.
losing his mind, he was losing his perceptions, he was losing his sense of morality. And then, after all that, Spock
Hmm.
uses the Vulcan nerve pinch on him. Finished. That's it. The end.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. I thought, why does he do that? But it is there because
yeah,
it was necessary there because he was somehow trying to fight Kirk.
yep,
I think Daystrom was trying to fight Kirk or something, and as
yep.
almost instinctively just uses the nerve pinch.
Nerve
I could
pinch.
see
Yes, he
that.
does. Because
I
he was
did
getting
notice that.
louder and louder also, and going completely out of control. And if he used that personality on the M5, there would have been a lot more
Hmm.
trouble.
Oh, yes, yes. That, of course, led us to the last, absolutely last scene, and well, second last scene, which is Wesley breaking off the attack,
Yep,
and Kirk astutely not raising the shields up, not
correct.
powering the
Yes,
shields as
yes.
a
Gamble. Yeah.
because yeah, that was a huge gamble because that could be a trap. It could also be sign of surrender.
Mm.
It could be both.
It could be
So
anything, and
the
there was no way
yeah.
Wesley could have known that this is a trap. There was no way he could have known that it is actually surrender. There was no way, and he took a human decision, which is, I think, what was lacking
Hmm.
so far.
So then comes Spock's idea of M6 with
Yeah.
human engrams from from Dr. McCoy, which will have a torrential flood of illogic.
Logic, yes, would be quite entertaining. I'm sure he would like to serve under that, wouldn't he? I think so.
M6 going
Yeah,
helter skelter everywhere.
with its temper and its sharp words, and it would be quite entertaining.
So let's
Yeah.
get to the likes and dislikes section.
Yeah.
So, what did you like and dislike in this episode, Parvati?
So I don't think I disliked anything about this episode because it was just so intense. It was so well done. The story was absolutely complete by itself, and there was nothing that I would want to say that I disliked or that I think that they should change. It was just done so well. And one thing that I liked so much in this episode above all else, even though I liked Kirk's internal monologue. I liked that he was so conflicted. I liked the banter between Spock and McCoy. I liked all of those things. The one thing I liked most of all was the M5 itself, because it was so
Mm.
silent. There was no way to gauge what it was actually thinking. There was no way to guess what it was doing. It would not respond to all those hysterical calls from the helm. It would not respond to anything. And you had to actually go to that one part of the ship and say M5 tie in for it to even acknowledge you. It, I think it was done so well. It also, in that brief portion towards the end where it was talking to Dr. Daystrom, it was actually repeating Daystrom's own insanity back at him in a very robotic voice. That was also done so well, because it is still a machine, and I doubt it actually felt anything, but at the same time, it was also completely unhinged. And I thought the characterization of that computer was done really well, and it's probably one of my favorite
Mm.
parts of this entire episode. What about you?
Well, I have this project. I'm going to build a huge card which says "I love DC Fontana." So she has done a fantastic job in
Yes.
this. Apparently, she rewrote the original idea
Mm,
to this form,
mm,
and I think, and the fact that this is done 58 years ago, with
mhm.
the commentary at the time, apparently this is from Memory Alpha, that this is between automation and jobs going away
Yeah.
argument in the 60s, which
Yes.
is valid even today.
Correct.
AI versus generative AI versus human beings, this is still on.
Yeah.
So to me, this is just fantastic. The way the pacing, I talked about it earlier also,
Mhm.
the pacing, the tension, the motivations of all the characters, and M5 characterization that you talked about
Yep.
was brilliant. It was really well done. One of the best episodes of,
Yes.
in fact, a really good science fiction episode. Forget that it's Star Trek, forget that it's original series or whatever. It's a great science fiction episode.
Yes.
And of course, the moments where Spock McCoy moment that we talked about.
Ah, yes.
So the banter, the
Banter. Yeah.
McCoy Kirk moment right in the middle, the midpoint. Sulu Chekhov also did a good job there. We also feel bad for them because they do a very good efficient. Sulu is as efficient as it gets, right? So
Correct.
if he was going to be replaced, that's something.
Yeah.
And
Even
also
McCoy
Scott.
was kicked. Yeah. Even McCoy was kicked out of the sick bay by
Yes,
because
he was. He was.
yeah,
Yes,
because
he
the
was kicked
M5
out of this.
decided that we don't need that and switched off all powers.
Yeah, unless right. So then there are only
Yeah.
19 people. They're all hale and healthy.
Yeah.
Okay, better do nothing. So sick pay is out of power.
Yeah.
Scotty was at his engineering best. He
Yeah.
he did what he does best, right? Doing pushing this thing there with the arc of lightning and
Correct.
matter antimatter, all that stuff. He did it so well. And of
Yeah.
course, Kirk was brilliant all through. It's really, we saw his vulnerable side, we saw
Correct.
his commanding side, we saw his intuitive side, we
Mm.
saw his judgment, compassion, all that rolled into one episode. Very
Yes.
superbly done.
Very nicely done.
DC Fontana really understands the universe, Star Trek universe so well.
Yes. Yes.
In fact, I don't want to take any credit away from Daystrom for what he has contributed so far.
Hmm.
I don't know if you've seen Star Trek Picard season three. This
No.
is really
No.
good.
Yep.
I didn't particularly enjoy season one and two,
Ah.
but season three was really good. And
Ah.
his name comes in one of the institutes that I think last two episodes. You see
Okay.
Daystrom Institute, and that's a space station named after him, and there's a whole bunch of things happening on that
Mm.
station. Yeah,
Yes.
that's happens there. Yeah. So those are things that I really liked. Yeah, like you, I didn't have anything that I want disliked in this episode.
Yep. Same thing.
That brings us to the last question, Parvati, which is:
Mm.
would you want to change anything, or would you want DC Fontana to explain to us what is going on in this episode?
No, I don't think so. The only question I had is why this federation agreed so quickly to have this machine installed on the Enterprise. But I don't think that's a story flaw. I think that's more of a in character decision for them. That was the only thing that
Hmm.
I was wondering. And even if I
Hmm.
don't get an explanation there, it's fine because they made absolute fools of themselves anyhow. And I think they It's a great episode. Please don't change anything. What do you think, Bala?
I want to paraphrase Spock here and say it's a dazzling display of screenwriting.
Yes, perfect.
Yeah, yeah, it is awesome, really
Yes,
awesome. Well, she's no more, but she has contributed to the Star Trek universe big time. So,
yes, yes, absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely,
that's she would be remembered for a long time to come.
absolutely, very true.
And we'll see you in the next episode. Thank you and bye.
Bye, everyone.
That brings us to the end of this episode. Thank you for listening to the podcast Enterprise. Please do share your reviews with us and please share this podcast with any of your writing friends or trickies. Live long and prosper.